All right, a tragic story coming out of northern Los Angeles. It's in the Antelope Valley. It's a city called Palmdale. That's actually in the 25th district where I ran for office, and it's Robert Fuller. He's 24 years old. On Wednesday morning at around 3:30, somebody finds his body, and he was hanging in a park. It's even uncomfortable to say, obviously, and. The medical examiner says that it's a suicide. Now, look, a lot of people have concluded in the opposite direction that it's definitely not a suicide. I just don't know how anyone would have enough information to rule in either direction because they did not. They're about to do a full autopsy. So if you didn't do a full autopsy, how do you know it was a suicide? On the other hand, the sheriff's department, you see, here's what's wrong with policing in America. The sheriff's department puts out a statement saying that he had some scars from past attempts at suicide. His family says is not remotely suicidal. Okay, I don't know who's telling the truth, but I do know, that historically we've been told, trust the cops. Cops are telling the truth and other people aren't. And it's turned out to be the exact opposite. So if you're asking me to trust cops and take their word for it, no way. Not even close. They'd have to show pictures, etc. Really, I'm not saying this in any political sense, but unless you're, you got a dog in the fight, you got a family member who's police, or you're wealthy and the police have always been incredibly nice to you, does any other real person think that, oh yeah, cops never lie? Yeah, obviously I'm going to take the cops' word for it. No. Now, by the way, there's no allegation that this was done by police. I don't want anybody to get it wrong, right? We have no idea who it was done by, and it might still be a suicide. It's certainly possible. But if you tell me, oh no, the sheriff's department kind of looked at it, they didn't do a full autopsy, but they probably think it's a suicide, and let's move on. No, let's not move on. So big march in Palmdale, as there should have been on Saturday. The community calling attention to it. That's fantastic. And now city officials are saying, oh, well, yeah, you know what? We agree with the family and we should look into this further. It's interesting how protests focus the mind, how people not simply taking authorities' word for it all of a sudden creates enough of a problem or enough of an issue for people to take a second look. So at a bare minimum, what was going to happen is, a young black man found hanging in a park. Yeah, I guess suicide. Whatever, let's move on. That's the least bad take on it, and that's not good either. Okay, now, why would I have done a full autopsy? Why would I have spent a lot more time on this case if I was the local sheriff's department from the get-go before anyone complained about it? Because it is not normal for people to hang themselves in the middle of a park. That's just not normal. That's almost never happens. In fact, the only other public hanging I can remember from the last decade or so, I'm not saying that others didn't happen, I'm sure they did, but it was a similar situation actually in South Bend, Indiana, when Buttigieg was mayor, and that's partly why I know about it. We did a lot of investigation of Buttigieg when he was running, and an amazing story came out of South Bend from back in 2011. Jahid Vasquez was a 16-year-old African-American found hanging publicly. And again, the cops there were like, yeah, sure, great. The coroner there had no medical experience, did no medical examination, and did no examination of the scene, and did no autopsy. It's not even a doctor. And he concluded, yeah, it was definitely a suicide. We're moving on. The family of Vasquez tried to get Buttigieg to pay attention to it, and he wouldn't, and that's why there was some controversy around it, and that's why we found out about it. The community, when our reporters, Jonathan Larson, went for TYT Investigates there, people were like, hey, have you heard of Jahid Vasquez and what happened to him? And that's how all this got unearthed. But, a public hanging is very unusual. And in both of those cases, the cops are like, oh, it must have been suicide. Almost no examination, let's move on. That's insane. So they do this stuff all the time, and then they wonder how they lost public confidence. You got the New York police union head screaming at the top of his lungs, why don't people respect us? I don't know, maybe because you beat the crap out of us all the time. and you're proud of it. You had another New York cop write a letter to his fellow officers apologizing for kneeling with protesters, saying he can't sleep at night because he feels so bad that he showed any empathy towards them. And he's like, the cop in me, he said, wants to kick my own ass. Why the cop in you, right? Because that's what cops do. They kick ass, other people's ass, poor people's, black people's, etc. And then they wonder how we lost trust. You find a guy hanging in a park, your first instinct should be like, oh my God, that is so strange. Let's make sure we put a lot of resources into investigating this to make sure it's not foul play. Can you, look, being a normal person and not a cop, would any of you find a guy hanging in a park, first of all, let alone African-American, anybody, right? An older person, a white person, whatever, and go, oh, that's normal, I bet it was a suicide. No real person would have that reaction. They'd be like, holy cow, what happened? And they'd want to really investigate. That's the other thing, the laziness. Let's just wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. No, let's not wrap it up. Let's find out what actually happened. In Minneapolis, the police got defunded by the city council. The right wing's in an outrage. You find out about the cops in Minneapolis. First of all, we know because of George Floyd, the poor yoga instructor woman who got shot, Philando Castile. But it's not just those high-profile shootings. Turns out they didn't bother testing 1,700 rape kits. They're like, oh, we did the rape kits. It was intrusive for this poor rape victim. Yeah, who cares? Who cares? I'm not even going to bother testing them. Turns out they'd only solved 22% of the rape cases in Minneapolis. Why? Because they like kicking ass. They like being out there beating people up. But, actual police work. Oh, that's so hard. I don't want to do it. So in this case, I don't know if it's laziness. I don't know if it's bias. I'm not sure what it is. And maybe at the end of the day, when they do a full autopsy and a real investigation, they might find out that it was suicide. I don't know. But that is not the first thought. No betting man would say, oh, likely suicide. Maybe there are things they know that they're not sharing with us that make it a more compelling case for suicide. But by the way, then you should share that with us because those are relevant facts. Right now, it looks terrible. And if you can't see that it looks terrible to find a black man hanging from a tree in the middle of a park, and you find that normal, then there's something wrong with you. And of course you're going to have protests. And of course people are going to be outraged because they should be outraged that you find that to be commonplace. That is not remotely commonplace. The only time that it's been commonplace in America was not a good time. And so that was when we had lynchings. And yes, then you had, unfortunately, a lot of African men hanging from trees. And so if you don't know that history, and you think, oh no, that's not remotely possible in America, well then you don't know anything. And again, you're admitting things about how little you care about doing your job, let alone the community, when you say, I don't know that pattern about black men hanging from trees in America. Is that a thing? Probably suicide. No, the flippant way that they have handled this has been disastrous. So the protest should continue until there's a real autopsy, until we get real answers about what might have happened. And it's not too much to ask for you to do policing, actual policing, not cracking skulls, but solving cases. Lastly, look, I have one interaction with the sheriff's department in Palmdale. That's why I mentioned in the beginning, this happens to be the district that I ran in. And that was not long ago. It was only a couple of months ago. We had a candidates forum at a Muslim American Community Center, and it was everybody was invited, Democrats and Republicans. None of the Republicans showed up. Shocking, I know. About half the Democrats showed up, and these are people running for Congress. And I don't know if it was because they found out I was going to be there, but these far right groups, or if it was because it was a Muslim community center, or both. But these far right groups showed up, and they would not let us answer any questions. They just kept yelling racist things over and over again. They told a woman in the crowd to take her hijab off. They reached for the hijab. They called all the Muslims there terrorists. Sheriff's department shows up. They're smiling the whole time. They think it's so funny. And they didn't kick them out. They said, well, they have a right to speak. No, in a candidates forum, you can ask any question you want when we get to the question and answer period. And we were nowhere near the question and answer period. Then you can even ask a racist question at that point. You have the right to do that. And we kept asking them, can you please wait till the end? And then you can ask any question you like, no matter how offensive it is. Nope, not good enough. They just start screaming at the top of their lungs, racist, bigoted things. The cops show up, they don't kick him out. So if they don't kick him out, you know what happens? They cancel the whole forum. And I just remember the whole time, the guy from the sheriff's department who was in charge at the time, smiling, big, wide smile the whole time, like, this is so funny. They're making fun of Muslims. Congressional candidates, who cares? We're not going to do this for him. It's at a Muslim community center. Look, I'm not saying he thought those things, but that big-ass smile certainly sent that message to every candidate and every Muslim in that room. Everyone came out thinking, man, there was no way that guy was going to protect us. So, look, to be fair, so there was no violence broke out. So they did the bare minimum. But did they protect the community? Did they protect the forum? Not at all. It appeared to not just me, everyone in the room, that they thought it was really funny that these guys were saying terribly bigoted things about Muslims and about Democrats at this forum. So that's the same sheriff's department. At a bare minimum, does that make you question how flippant they are about this as they were flippant about the previous incident? And this is far more severe, 1 billion times more severe, the person found hanging. So it does not give me a lot of confidence that the sheriff's department in Palmdale is on this case and really cares to solve it and has done its due diligence. None of this fact pattern shows that. If they can show that, great. I'm ready to listen to all available evidence. But right now, they've done an abysmal job. And guys, this is why I tell you to shake the rafters. Nothing physical, ever, okay? But if you're not protesting and you're not demanding change, I guarantee you won't get any. Let's demand change in this case and see what we can get. You should hold your government officials accountable, because believe it or not, they're actually supposed to serve you. I know we've forgotten that because it seems like they only serve the wealthy and the powerful, but they're supposed to serve all of us. And I love that the citizens of Palmdale are demanding that they do to fix what is at a bare minimum here, a very, very questionable case, and get us clear answers.